JT Shaver here with New Layer, and in this video I'll show you what might be the best new on-camera microphones in the Sennheiser MKE 200 and 400. This video is sponsored by Sennheiser, but that won't stop me from sharing my honest opinions, good and bad, because these mics aren't perfect. I bought the original MKE 400 about a decade ago, and honestly I was really disappointed with the audio quality. So I was really curious to see how Sennheiser improved the quality on this newer generation of mics. First thing is first, which is the build quality. These little guys are pretty chubby, which I didn't like at first, but after using them for a few weeks, I think I actually prefer this design for on-camera mics. Yes, they are a little girthy, but the reason for that is because they have an internal windscreen and an internal shock mount built into the body of the mic. Most other mics rely on external shock mounts, which add bulk to your setup and just use more pieces, so you're more likely to lose or forget something. External shock mounts might work a little bit better in really rough scenarios, but I've had no issues with wind or handling noise with either of these mics. And they both come with an external windscreen if you need that for those scenarios. Both of these mics are essentially all plastic, but I think it's a perfect balance of lightweight and quality material. And I've never been worried about breaking these mics any more than any others that I have that are made of metal. The MKE 200 especially weighs barely more than just the two AAA batteries that go into the MKE 400. That's one of the main differences between these two mics. The MKE 400 uses two AAA batteries for power, while the 200 uses nothing but plug-in power. So the 200 runs solely on power from your mobile phone or your camera, or a dedicated recording device. The MKE 400 also has an auto power function, so it'll turn on and off automatically to conserve power. There are other mics out there that have an auto power function, but there's one detail about the MKE 400 that I think is a bigger deal than it might seem at first. Most other mics have a really tiny power light, and you usually can't see it unless you're really close or standing to the side of the mic, so sometimes it's hard to tell if it's on or off. The MKE 400 has a bigger light that's really easy to see from farther away, and that might not seem like a big deal, but if you've ever recorded a full video only to find out your audio wasn't turned on, you'll know that this is a lifesaver. The MKE 200 has no buttons or switches, so it's as simple as they come. Personally, I prefer the control that the MKE 400 gives me, but I totally understand the value of a literal plug-and-play microphone. The MKE 400 is bigger, but adds some features that make it more flexible. That's regardless of differences in audio quality, which I'll get to soon because these two mics do sound very different. The MKE 400 has a 3-stage gain switch ranging from -20 to +20 decibels. That way you can record loud, quiet, or in-between sounds more easily. It also has a low-cut filter at 200 Hz to eliminate any unwanted buzz or hum. Again, I personally prefer to record as much information as possible and process it in post, but I totally understand that not everyone's like me, so the option's there if you need it. The final difference is that the MKE 400 has a dedicated headphone out port complete with volume control. That way you can preview exactly what you're gonna get and make sure your audio is not clipping before you hit record. One last thing to mention is that both of these mics come with locking TRS and TRRS cables, so you can use them with a mobile phone, a camera, or a dedicated audio recorder without worrying about pulling them out of the mic by mistake. I know you probably came to this video just to hear what these mics sound like, and we'll get to that, but before we do, leave a comment really quickly and let me know if you want to hear a complete comparison between these mics and mics from other brands. There's too many options out there to compare everything in this video, but if enough people are interested, I'll try to make that happen. A few weeks ago, I asked what you wanted to learn most about these mics, and the main request was to hear them from multiple distances. Keep in mind that these samples are done in a totally non-soundproofed room, and they have no processing except for some audio normalization. I will show you the full potential of these mics with some basic editing, but first, these are just raw audio samples. This is the MKE 200 at 1/2 meter, and this is your typical distance for vlogging or talking head type videos. This is the MKE 400 at 1/2 meter, and again, this is your typical distance for vlogging or talking head type videos. This is the MKE 200 at 1 meter, which you might find yourself using if you're filming someone else while they talk. This is the MKE 400 at 1 meter, which again, you might find yourself using if you're filming someone else while they talk. This is the MKE 200 at 2 meters, which is pretty far for an on-camera mic, but I'm curious to hear how it sounds. This is the MKE 400 at 2 meters, which again, is pretty far for an on-camera mic, but I'm curious to hear how it sounds. The sweet spot for these mics is definitely in the 1/2 meter or 1 to 2 foot range. The MKE 200 definitely has a thinner and more hollow sound, which I personally wouldn't use as is. But I was very surprised at how good this mic sounded with some basic editing, which I'll show you shortly. To me, the MKE 400 sounds much more like a more expensive microphone than it actually is. It's got good low end, but at the same time good clarity in the mid and high frequencies. One downside to these mics is that none of the gain positions on the MKE 400 really match up to the volume level of the MKE 200. If the center gain position on the MKE 400 was the same volume as the 200, it would just make switching between these mics more easy. That way you can swap between them without readjusting the volume, or use two of the same camera with one of each mic and just set the levels the same for both. It's something small, but it's worth knowing if you planned to pick up one of each of these mics, because I highly recommend getting two of the same mic for this reason, rather than one of each. So you've heard the raw audio samples, but I also wanted to share what you can get out of these mics with some basic noise gating, compression, and equalization. This is the MKE 200 at 1/2 meter with no post-processing besides volume normalization. This is the MKE 200 at 1/2 meter with basic noise gating, equalization, and compression. This is the MKE 400 at 1/2 meter with no post-processing besides volume normalization. This is the MKE 400 at 1/2 meter with basic noise gating, equalization, and compression. Like I said earlier, the raw audio of the MKE 200 isn't anything special, but by boosting some of the lower frequencies and cutting others, it sounds infinitely better in my opinion. I love the size and simplicity of the MKE 200, so if you're okay creating some audio presets and applying those each time that you record, I think it sounds great for what it is. If you're not a fan of editing your audio, then you might want to stick to the MKE 400 because it does sound better out of the box. Although with some basic post-processing, you can enhance the MKE 400 significantly as well. Besides indoor talking head setups, I think the other focus for on-camera mics is for vlogging. So I thought I'd share some outdoor clips as well, that way the audio isn't colored by room reverb or anything like that. I think one of the main reasons people are looking at these mics is for vlogging. So right now I have the MKE 400 set up on top of my Sony a7S III, and it's mounted right in the cold shoe, and I have it at 24 millimeters at arm's length, so this is kind of what you can expect from the 400. This is what the MKE 200 sounds like with the same setup, and there's a couple things that make this mic appealing. One is that there's no buttons whatsoever, you just plug it in and go, which makes it really simple. And the other thing is that it takes no batteries, it just uses the power from your camera. No surprises here, the MKE 200 sounds a bit duller and flatter, while the MKE 400 sounds more in your face. Overall, the MKE 200 is about what I expected, with the exception of how good it sounded after some basic editing. And the MKE 400 really did surprise me with how good it sounded with minimal effort. The MKE 200 is about $100, and the MKE 400 is double that at around $200. Both mics are also available in an optional smartphone kit for $30 more. Those kits include a Manfrotto Pixie tabletop tripod and a phone holder, which can range from $30 to $50, so if you need those pieces, the kits are worth the price. So what do you think? Would you consider either of these mics versus the alternatives that we're used to hearing? Before you go, leave a comment and let me know what you think. Links are in the description if you want to check these mics out further. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.